Has your daughter's fiancé ever looked you straight in the eye, right in your own backyard, and said, "We only want important people at the wedding"? Yeah, he said that. To me. If you were in my shoes, would you speak up, walk away, or stay quiet for the sake of peace? I stayed quiet at first, but silence has a cost. And eventually, I chose differently. Before we dive in, let me know. What time are you listening to this? And where are you? Drop a comment below, we'd love to hear from you. The night before my daughter's wedding felt heavier than it should have. People filled the yard, talking over one another. I stood by the fence away from the circle of light, pretending to check the edge of the garden I'd spent months fixing. Logan was at the center of it all. Tall, handsome, his shirt sleeves rolled up that smile that says he already belongs wherever he goes. He had his hand on Clara's back, guiding her gently from one guest to the next, the picture of a man who thinks he knows what he's doing. Someone raised a glass and called for a toast. I expected a word of thanks, maybe a nod in my direction for hosting the dinner. Instead, Logan lifted his glass and said, "We've decided to keep things small, just the important people." Then he turned to me, still smiling. "You don't have to worry about the guest list, sir. We've got it handled." The word "sir" landed like a drop of oil in water, polite, cold, impossible to mix with anything human. For a heartbeat, the entire table went quiet. Then came the forced laughter, that nervous sound people make when they want a moment to die quickly. I nodded more out of habit than agreement. "Sure," I said, though my voice came out rough. "Whatever works for you." Clara's face turned toward me. She smiled in that careful way, the one that says, "Please don't make this worse." I could read the apology in her eyes. I gave her a small nod as if to say it was fine, though we both knew it wasn't. The party went on. Logan was telling a story about a business deal, how he'd doubled some client's investment. His voice carried across the yard, confident, loud, unbothered. I realized he hadn't even noticed what he'd said to me. Maybe that was worse than if he had meant it. I tried to focus on the little things, but the words kept circling back. Important people. For years, I'd tried to raise Clara with patience, with quiet guidance. When her mother died, she was 17, angry at everything. I learned to listen instead of speak. But standing there surrounded by chatter that no longer included me. A few guests came over to thank me for hosting. They used phrases like, "beautiful setup, great food, lovely backyard," compliments that touched nothing. I smiled, nodded, kept pouring drinks, doing the motions I knew by heart. They left quickly after that. When the music thinned out, Clara came to find me near the kitchen door. "Dad," she said softly. "Logan didn't mean anything by it." I looked at her. "I know." She shifted from one foot to the other, the hem of her dress brushing the floor. "He just wants everything perfect. He gets nervous when things aren't his way." "He'll get used to imperfection," I said. She gave a small laugh, unsure whether I was joking. "You're not upset, are you?" "I'm fine," I told her, and that was the end of it. She touched my arm, light as a bird landing, and then walked back outside to him. I stayed behind, pretending to rinse glasses. By the time everyone left, the backyard had gone still. I turned off the speaker but left the lights hanging in the trees. Beyond the fence, a low hum from the highway lingered. Logan's words replayed calm and certain, like he'd said something obvious instead of cruel. I thought about turning everything off, locking up, ending the night properly. But I stayed. Maybe I wanted to see how long the bulbs would glow without me tending them, proof that something I built could shine a little longer on its own. The yard looked used up. I gathered napkins, stacked chairs, tossed paper plates before the sprinklers kicked on. A glass had tipped into the rosemary, a plate of deviled eggs had collapsed in the grass. I moved through it all like I was cleaning up after strangers. Clara didn't come down. Her text read, "I'm sorry, Dad." He didn't mean it like that. Nothing else. I read it a few times, waiting for it to land somewhere. It didn't. I slipped the phone into my pocket and kept working. By midday, a few cancellations came through, sick kids' work trips, something came up. 3 in one day. Logan must have said something, painting me as the stubborn father who couldn't keep up. No one needed to say it aloud. I could feel the distance setting in. I drove to Lake Union and stopped at the cafe by the marina. The boats rocked gently, their masts clinking against the wind. Inside, the place smelled like burnt espresso and old wood. Maya was already there near the back, a forgotten cup in front of her. She saw me, lifted her chin slightly. I hadn't seen her in 2 years. I ordered whatever came first and sat across from her. Long time, she said, pushing a napkin aside. Didn't expect to run into anyone. Most people don't, she said. You looked like someone who needed a place to stop. We both stared out the window, dogs being walked, locks unchained from bikes. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't try to fill the space. People value what's useful, she said. When it's not, they call it outdated. Or say it's not your place anymore. I didn't answer, but her words landed deep, like something that had been waiting to be said. They said something to you, didn't they? She asked. It was small, I said. But not really. Small things cut deeper, she replied. Big ones you brace for. The little ones find the soft spots. We sat with that. I tugged at my sleeve and said, if I bring it up, I ruin it for her. If I stay quiet, I disappear. You get to choose which version of pain you can live with. That sentence stayed between us long after we stopped talking. I drove home slow, the sun turning everything too warm for how it felt. The yard was waiting, but I didn't go out. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the folder where I kept receipts and wedding contracts, catering tents, invitations. All of them carried my name, my payments. They were building something on ground I had already laid. Clara came through the door near dinner, moving quickly, mumbling, just tired, as she went upstairs. I let her go. She looked like someone trying to keep her balance on a lie. Later, I folded linens alone, smoothing each corner until it felt right. A napkin stained with wine wouldn't come clean, so I threw it away and turned off the porch light. My phone was blank. No new texts, no follow-up. Just that one message sitting there like a note left on a door no one planned to reopen. They held the meeting at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind where water's already poured before you sit. Logan called it a final walkthrough. I thought it'd be about flowers or timing, but it turned into a pitch. He had slides, mock-ups, cost charts, called it streamlining the ceremony. 6 of us sat around the table. Clara beside him, nodding on cue. 2 planners across, smiling their professional smiles. I was at the far end. No one asked me to move closer. Logan opened with a quick thank you, then launched into his revisions, cutting the backyard setup, the caterers I'd hired, the quartet I'd booked through a friend. All replaced with more modern options. Clara's dad put in a lot of effort, he said. It was thoughtful. But we want to make sure everything's handled professionally. That word thoughtful landed harder than he knew. It sounded like a compliment for something quaint, a pat on the head. No one met my eye. Then came the closer. I'll cover the rest from here. Mr. Hartman can just enjoy the day. Respectful on the surface, dismissal underneath. I glanced toward Clara. She stared at her notes pen, turning in her fingers. Not once did she look up. They moved on to table layouts and shuttle schedules. I stopped listening. Weeks of calls, deposits, favors, all erased with a polite nod. When it ended, someone asked if I wanted a takeout box. I declined. The street smelled faintly of wet concrete. I sat in my truck without starting it, watching strangers pass. Eventually, I drove not home, not anywhere in particular, just far enough to let the noise thin out. The house felt muted when I returned, as if it too had overheard. I went to the office and opened the wedding binder receipts notes color samples. Near the back were the invitation proofs with my name beneath Clara's, hosted by her father, Elliot Hartman. I'd spent half an hour picking the font. Those pages didn't hurt to look at. They just felt foreign. Contracts, still active payments cleared, none of it mattered now. They'd paved over it with a smile and called it progress. I pulled open a drawer of old photos, Clara with a missing tooth and a science fair ribbon, then older in her prom dress, asking me to zip it up because her mother wasn't there. Each picture felt like a postcard from a life that had drifted somewhere else. A thought slipped in, soft, almost weightless. If I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone notice I shut the drawer and turned off the light? Something in me had shifted, not cracked, just realigned. I left the binder open on the desk and made coffee. The bitterness steadied me more than sleep could. Dinner at Logan's place was meant to be casual. Two families getting comfortable before the wedding. His text that morning had promised just dinner and laughs. I almost declined, but Clara called, so I went. Their house was precise, every surface deliberate. Logan's mother greeted me with a bright, practiced smile that faltered too soon. "Elliot, so glad you could make it." She handed me a drink I hadn't asked for. Clara was in the kitchen helping plate the food. When I offered to help, she brushed it off. "It's fine, Dad. We've got it." We sat around the table, his parents, his sister and her husband, a few friends Logan invited for energy. I was placed between his father and a cousin checking his watch. The conversation skimmed along sports vacations market's safe ground where nothing real could grow. When Logan wasn't talking, he was performing pouring wine, cracking jokes, commanding attention, with the ease of someone who'd never had to wait for it. Clara laughed half a beat late, each time her rhythm slightly off. Midway through the meal, between his rehearsed charm and another story, he leaned back. "Clara's dad's been incredible with all the prep," he said. "He's got opinions about everything, though. Guess that's what happens when you've been in charge too long." Polite laughter rippled through the table. His mother tisked, his sister smirked. Clara smiled like it was expected. Then he added, "At that age, it's hard to let go. Control becomes second nature. He never looked my way. That made it worse. I placed my utensils down, took a sip of water, waited for the sound of plates to cover my words. Maybe I said, or maybe older people just aren't used to being told how to love their children properly. The room froze for a beat. A spoon clinked. Logan's grin faltered. Conversation veered off to safer topics, cakes, travel, anything else. I finished my plate without tasting it. Logan got louder, forcing the rhythm back. When dinner ended, guests drifted to the living room. Music hummed. I stayed in the kitchen, rinsing my glass too long just to hear the water run. Clara joined me. Her hand brushed my sleeve. "You didn't have to say that. Say what you made things tense. He was only joking. Maybe he should work on his timing." "Dad," she whispered. "He tries. You don't have to take everything so personally." "I didn't," I said, drying the glass. "Not everything." She shook her head. "You could have let it go." I nodded once. She walked back to the others, already smoothing herself into place beside him. I wiped the counter again, though it was clean. No one came over. When I said goodnight, Logan's parents thanked me like I'd just finished a service call. The night was colder than I expected. My breath rose in faint clouds as laughter trailed behind me, fading with distance. At home, I didn't switch on the lights. The darkness felt simple, untouched. I sat at the table jacket, still on palms, flat on the wood, feeling the faint vibration of the refrigerator hum through it. I wasn't angry anymore. What settled instead was distance, cool, steady, almost freeing. They hadn't asked me to step back. I already had. The cafe still smelled of burnt beans and old wood the way places do when they've stayed unchanged too long. I hadn't been there in years, but the same tired barista stood behind the counter. Maya had already taken it. She didn't wave, just lifted her brows and nudged the seat across from her with her foot. I sat down, both hands on the chipped tabletop. "You're early," she said, sipping from a heavy mug. "Couldn't sleep." "Still, it's not about sleep anymore. It's about staying upright." She chuckled. "Lucky for you, this place has caffeine and chairs. You're halfway there." The lake outside was flat, 2 ducks gliding across it like nothing ever changed. We stayed quiet a bit, the kind that didn't demand filling. Maya leaned forward. Joanne finally cut her son off. "Joanne from accounting." She nodded. He'd been borrowing for years, college rent breakups, always a story. She kept giving. Then found out his last bill payment was a trip to Mexico with his new girlfriend. I muttered, "Damn." She told him she loved him and that it was the last check she'd ever write. She still talks to him sometimes, but she told me something that stuck. I realized I wasn't helping him. I was excusing him, and I was erasing myself in the process. The words landed heavy, balancing something that had already been tipping inside me. Maya turned a sugar packet over in her fingers. "You've been giving everything Elliot money time forgiveness. What's come back, Clara's trying to keep the peace. That's not the same as honoring you." I looked down at my hands, a nail still stained from fixing garden lights, knuckles split from cold. I hadn't noticed until now. "You think I should say something? You already know the answer. You're just waiting for permission. And you're giving it." "No," she said. "I'm reminding you, you never needed it. I paid for her coffee even though she protested. It felt necessary." Back home, I went straight to the office. The wedding binder sat where I'd left it. This time I didn't look at it with dread. I flipped through it like an accountant closing a ledger. Contracts, floral orders, tent rentals, catering deposits, everyone under my name. My emails, my payments. I opened my laptop, checked statements, matched transactions. Line by line, it was all mine. The entire foundation they'd quietly decided wasn't good enough. It wasn't the money, it was the erasure. I'd been edited out of my own contribution. I sat with that, not angry, just clear. Then I reached for a pad and began listing vendors' deposits cancellation policies. Underlined deadlines, circled what could be reversed. It didn't feel like revenge, more like packing a room before handing over the keys. I made one call to the tent company. The man told me I had until week's end for a full refund. I thanked him and hung up. The wedding binder lay open its spine, bending from use. Half the pages were gone. I'd shredded the contracts one by one over the past few days' tent florist lights. Each vendor had asked if I was sure. I was. The refrigerator hummed steady as a clock. The rain kept rhythm against the glass. The caterer had been the most surprised. "Did something happen?" she asked, her tone lifting slightly to happen as if I were canceling out of grief. "No," I said. "I just changed my mind." Now the deposits were back, contracts, voided files marked closed. I hadn't told Clara or Logan. I wasn't hiding anything, just letting things run their course. They kept planning, still sending updates, and color-coded PDFs, photos of suits and table settings. Logan added a countdown app to our group chat, 13 days to go. I scrolled through it all like a man reading about a party he'd never agreed to attend. There was no urge to correct or warn them. If they noticed what was missing, they didn't mention it. That morning, Maya had texted, "No preamble, silence has its own sound, Elliot." Louder than most people think. I hadn't replied, but I kept reading it over and over until it felt like something I could touch. My mug sat half full of cold tea. I held it anyway, drawing what little warmth remained. Calm, not righteous, not vindicated, just still. Weeks spent tying knots, and now I was quietly untying them one thread at a time. Not out of anger or spite, but because I finally remembered that I could. It's strange how much of yourself you give away without asking for anything back. Stranger still, when no one notices the giving, only the taking when it stops. I thought of Clara, how once as a child, she'd fallen asleep clinging to my collar in the nurse's office. Back then she only wanted me. Now she wanted Logan to like me, but only in ways that didn't inconvenience him. Somewhere along the line she'd mistaken my quiet for consent. The list I'd written earlier sat beside me. Vendors' fees, refund windows. Practical things for when words no longer worked. At the bottom in my uneven handwriting, I'd added a line I hadn't planned. There's a difference between stepping back and being erased. I didn't know what to do with it. Maybe nothing. Maybe it wasn't meant for anyone else. The call came while I was in the garage sorting through old paint cans that hadn't been opened since Clara was in college. Gray light crept through the half-open door. My phone buzzed on the workbench, unknown number. I nearly ignored it. Then answered. "Mr. Hartman," a woman's voice asked, brisk and professional. "This is Janice from the Evergreen Hotel Events Department. I'm calling about a few inconsistencies in the Hartman-Pierce wedding account." I set down the brush I'd been holding. "What kind of inconsistencies?" "Well, several payments appear to have been reversed or flagged as inactive. The ballroom catering add-ons, the flower arrangements, all linked to your authorization. We just need confirmation that this wasn't an error." I let her finish. "It wasn't an error," I said. She hesitated. "Oh. I see. The couple is here right now, Clara and Mr. Pierce. They're concerned. I imagine they are." There was a pause, like she wanted to ask more, but knew better. "Thank you for clarifying, sir." I hung up. I stood for a moment, eyes on the uneven rows of tools along the pegboard. The phone buzzed again. "Logan." I answered on the second ring. "What the hell did you do, Elliot?" His tone was sharp, breathless. "The hotel says the deposits are gone. The catering company's backing out. Are you losing it or trying to sabotage your own daughter's wedding? I canceled what I paid for. You can't just—" He stopped, probably realizing others were listening. Muffled chatter, a nervous laugh, then his voice again louder. "You can't pull funding 2 weeks before the ceremony. Do you know what this does to Clara?" Her name caught somewhere in my chest, but passed. "I know exactly what it does," I said, calm. He exhaled hard. "You told everyone you wanted her to have the perfect day. You looked me in the eye and said you'd handle it. Now you pull the rug out." The scrape of chairs, a whisper more background noise. "Answer me," I already did. Silence, then a colder tone. "You think this makes you noble? It makes you pathetic. Clara doesn't need your control, she needs your support." That word again, control. The same one he'd used at dinner. "I'm not controlling anything," I said. "I'm letting go." He scoffed. "You'll regret this." I could picture him, arms crossed, chin lifted, mistaking arrogance for strength. I ended the call. The click was louder than his voice. The house felt cooler when I walked back in. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and pulled up the draft I'd written the night before, subject termination of wedding contracts. Hartman account. I reread each line, vendors' contracts, refunds, then double-checked attachments, proof of payment, cancellation notices, confirmations, everything in order. No explanations, no emotion. Just closure. I hit send. The message vanished. A car passed, tires hissing across wet pavement. I listened until the sound faded, then shut the laptop. The room smelled faintly of soil and rust. Balance, that's what it felt like. Not triumph or peace, just equilibrium like a scale that had stopped tipping. For a second I considered calling Clara, but the thought went as easily as it came. She'd know soon enough from him, from the hotel, from everyone. I rinsed a mug that didn't need rinsing, refilled it, and sat back down. The fridge hummed, the clock ticked steady. I drew a line through the last item on my list: ballroom deposit, Evergreen Hotel. A faint smudge of graphite clung to my thumb. I wiped it away. By midday, the calls began, not to me, but through the city's polite chain of vendors. Contracts froze, orders stalled, deliveries stopped. One by one, the dominoes fell. The hotel catering team emailed all relevant parties, citing missing payment authorization. The florist followed politely, withdrawing. The planner, Ava, sent a careful note to the group chat about unexpected financial disruptions. Clara texted, "First, Dad did something happen. The vendors are saying you withdrew payment. Please call me." I didn't. Then another Logan's, furious. He's at the hotel trying to fix it. I turned the phone face down. It buzzed in short bursts, then went still. By mid-afternoon, my inbox filled with copied threads. Urgent confirmation needed, immediate attention required. None of them were mine anymore. I pictured Logan downtown, pacing through lobbies, voice raised just enough to sound in control. Clara beside him, smoothing over what couldn't be smoothed. They'd built their show on borrowed ground, and the floor had finally given way. No pity, no pride. Just quiet. Upstairs, I opened the cabinet over my desk and pulled down 2 folders, work and personal. Old memos, project drafts, reminders, scrawled in margins. I stacked them neatly, opened a blank email, and began typing effective. Immediately, I am retiring from my position at Albright Engineering. Thank you for the years of opportunity. No bitterness, no elaboration, just a clean end. I attached the forms, vacation balance, key return, transfer notes, and sent. The computer made a small chime. 30 years gone with one click. I leaned back, eyes on the framed certificate on the wall, the ink-faded glass dusty. Thought about taking it down, then left it there. A soft knock broke the stillness. Maya stood on the porch, coat damp. "I figured you'd be here." I stepped aside. She looked around the room, the stacks of files open, laptop half-packed, briefcase. "So she said you did it. I did what I should have done months ago. You don't have to explain? I'm not." "Good." We sat without speaking. When she rose, she brushed her sleeve and said, "You did what needed doing." "Maybe." Her hand rested briefly on my shoulder. "You'll breathe easier now." After she left, I poured a glass of water, took one sip, and set it down. The stove clock blinked, 5:42. Somewhere phones were still ringing. By evening, the quiet thickened, almost physical. No notifications, no reminders, just the sound of a life folding back into itself. I didn't check the updates. I didn't have to. Logan would have scrambled, called in, favors borrowed, promised too much. Control always felt like safety to men like him. But weddings are fragile. One fracture, and the rest follows. By nightfall, the hotel's memo read, "Postponed indefinitely." I turned off the light, watching daylight fade behind the roofs. A car alarm chirped once, then quit. A week later, the noise thinned. For days, phones buzzed in every household that had ever known either family. The wedding was postponed indefinitely, which meant canceled, though no one said it aloud. Politeness helped dull the sting. I stayed at the lake house small enough for one person to live quietly. Mornings came early. The water stayed still until the first boat crossed. I made coffee, read the paper, watched ducks glide by. A rhythm I could keep. News came secondhand. A cousin left a voicemail. "You did the right thing. That kid's got no respect." Another email said Logan had overreacted. Most messages came dressed in sympathy no one had asked for. I deleted them all. Logan had been busy rewriting his version. He told people the wedding fell apart because of my controlling nature that I couldn't let go. The words reached me in fragments. What struck me quietly, not unkindly, was how little his story worked. Those who once avoided my gaze now kept theirs from his. Not anger, just that polite distance reserved for someone who's lost credibility. I didn't correct or explain. Let him speak. The truth had already settled in where it needed to. Some evenings I walked along the lake path, gravel crunching underfoot. Neighbors stopped to ask how I was doing, curiosity hiding behind concern. Heard things got complicated, one said. Complicated tends to sort itself out, I replied. He chuckled awkwardly and changed the subject. There was peace in knowing nothing needed defending. The worst had already passed, and it wasn't so bad. Logan's attempts to recover his image turned clumsy posts about growth and fresh starts. One featured Clara's name tagged beneath a caption about mutual decisions. The comments were polite, restrained, most people scrolling past. One night, I read a post of his laptop light flickering across the table. A brief flicker of pity, then I closed the screen. Clara hadn't called, maybe sorting through the wreckage, maybe ashamed. I didn't reach out. Some silences need room to breathe. Days stretched easy. I fixed a loose porch step, oiled the shed hinges, cooked more than I ate. Maya stopped by now, and then unannounced, bringing fruit or bread, staying an hour before heading home. We spoke about her students, the weather, ordinary things. One afternoon she leaned on the porch rail. "You look lighter," she said. Lighter, like someone who finally put something down. I didn't answer, but I understood. The quiet filled the house without pressing against it anymore. After she left, I sat by the lake with tea, watching clouds drift across the water. The surface barely stirred. Calm after a storm doesn't feel like victory. It just feels honest. I realized I didn't want to win. The game had ended the moment I stopped playing. The wind at the pier had that late autumn bite, sharp enough to wake you, soft enough to make you stay. The wooden boards creaked under each step, damp from the mist off Puget Sound. I walked slowly, hands in my coat pockets, letting the cold pass through. The water below had turned darker, almost metallic, swallowing reflections instead of giving them back. A few gulls circled near the dock, quarreling over scraps. A man at the edge cast his line and didn't glance up. Everything moved with a quiet rhythm, steady, unbothered. That morning, an old co-worker called. He mentioned almost offhand that Logan's firm had lost its investors' reputation issues, management optics. The story had spread fast enough that people were already backing away. I didn't ask for details. Later, a message came through a mutual friend Clara had left him. Moved out of their downtown apartment. She'd gone back to her old place, the one she'd kept, just in case. I thanked the caller, hung up, and went back to tightening a loose hinge on the porch door. The news didn't hurt or please me. It just passed through like wind through reeds, loud for a moment, then gone. Standing by the pier railing, I thought of her. Could almost see her packing that old suitcase with the broken zipper she never fixed, leaving quietly, maybe without saying goodbye. The phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked at her name. Dad. The word cracked around the edges. I waited. "I'm sorry," she said. "For all of it." A gust whistled through the boards. I pressed the phone closer. "It's all right," I said. "You just need to live your life honestly, that's all." She exhaled, soft but unsteady. "I thought I was doing the right thing." "I know." We stayed on the line. Traffic murmured faintly on her end, a horn somewhere in the distance. "Are you angry with me?" "No," I said. "Not anymore." It was true. Whatever anger I'd carried had already burned out. "I don't know what happens next," she whispered. "None of us do." That's the honest part. A small laugh slipped through the static. She said she'd call again. I told her to take her time. When the call ended, I held the phone listening to the hum that follows quiet. The sky had shifted from gray to silver light and water blending into each other. I thought about all of it, the tension, the unraveling, the noise, and felt none of it pressing on me anymore. No satisfaction, no sorrow. Just understanding. Some people wake up only after the noise stops. I leaned on the railing, palms pressed to damp wood. A fairy horn carried across the sound, low and even. The world was still moving, still carrying everyone somewhere. I turned toward the parking lot. Teenagers passed, laughing, one carrying fries. They didn't see me, and that felt right. Mornings here smell of salt and pine. I wake before sunrise out of habit, listening to the tide against the rocks below. The cabin is small, uneven floored, with a garden that refuses to stay neat, but it feels built to last. Most days start the same. I boil water, grind coffee from the shop on Main Street, stand by the window while the kettle hisses. Across the road, Ross walks his dog. We nod when our paths cross. In this town, silence does the talking. Work finds me sometimes. A small construction firm down the highway sends sketches for decks and remodels. I draw them by hand, send them back, earn enough for groceries and gas. No deadlines, no meetings, just quiet work that keeps my hands busy. After lunch, I tend the garden. The soil's heavy with sand, but the tomatoes have learned to live with it. So have I. Maya showed up last week without warning, her car crunching up the gravel while I mended a fence post. She stepped out with that same half-smile, holding a paper bag of peaches. Figured you wouldn't mind company. I don't, I said. You always did like the edges of things. Lakes, cliffs, oceans. We worked on the fence together. The rhythm of hammering and measuring filled the quiet. After a while, she asked, "Do you ever think about it? About what, the wedding? The mess?" "Sometimes," I said, "but only the parts that taught me something. That's one way to live. It's the only one that makes sense." Later, we sat on the porch drinking coffee that had gone cold. She talked about her niece and the new school term. I told her about the neighbor who swore he'd seen a seal in the cove. We laughed like people who'd already cried enough in other years. As the day faded, she studied me. "You seem settled. I think that's just another word for old." "No," she said. "You just stopped chasing fairness. That's not age. That's peace." When she left her car, sent up a brief cloud of dust before the road swallowed it again. Days move at their own pace. I cook simple meals, soups, bread, fish, if I'm patient enough to wait by the shore. The locals wave when we meet at the market. No one pries. It's a good way to live. Logan's name surfaced once more in the papers. A short note about financial mismanagement dissolved partnerships. Then nothing. Just quiet, the kind that turns a name into a footnote. Clara writes sometimes. Short letters, never emails. She signs them Love C, as if still deciding what kind of daughter she wants to be. She's working in Portland now, helping with community projects. Her words sound steadier each time. I keep the letters in a tin box under my tool drawer, not for safekeeping, just to remember we made it through. Evenings settle gently here. I sit by the fence as the water shifts from blue to slate waves, blending with the rustle of grass. There's no one waiting for me to speak, no need to prove what I've become. Sometimes I think about all the noise I used to live in: phones, meetings, expectations, the endless trying to stay good in someone else's story. Now the quiet feels like breath, not absence. Tonight I'll sleep early. Tomorrow maybe sand the porch rail, maybe paint the back door if the weather holds. Nothing urgent, nothing heavy. Before heading in, I stand by the edge of the yard and watch fog drift over the water. The horizon blurs where sea meets sky. I don't try to name it. I just let it stay.